Okay, well, continuing my look at the 12-inch line from character options of the Doctor Who figures from the early 2000s, today I'm going to turn my attention to what I think of as the Series 3 monsters. Let's kick off by taking a closer look at the Jedun Captain. Now, by now you'll be very familiar with the packaging for this scale of figures in this line, and there is no real difference here. The only key thing to point out about the Jedun Captain is, of course, that it is a much bigger, thicker package because, of course, the figure itself is a lot broader and bigger than the other figures in this line. And as a result, I have to say there's something very impressive about this figure once he's liberated from his packaging. He's very different to any of the other figures in this line. For a start, he's made of pretty much solid plastic head to toe. There's no real material used on this figure, so his texture's very different. The head sculpt is pretty consistent with the other figures in the line in that it is excellent. It's a very, very good likeness of what we see on screen. They've done a particularly good job of this head sculpt. It's made almost exclusively of rubber, so it has quite a nice texture. It has that sort of rhino hide as a consequence, which I think is very cool. And there's a lot of nice detailing going on here. There's a couple of different paint washes, which I think are really effective. And I just think there's a lot of detail in the eyes, the nostrils, the mouth, the teeth, and the ears, and of course the rhino horns. I think they've done a really, really nice job of what is quite a difficult figure to bring to life. As I said, the rest of the body is a hard plastic, but you will notice that he has these shoulder pads, but thankfully they are articulated. You can remove those shoulder pads and you can see there is this point of articulation here which will allow the arm to have the full range of motion when it comes to the articulation, which is good stuff. There's not an awful lot of detailing or texturing in this outfit, but it is pretty faithful to what we see on screen. And where there are little details like the buckles, they are nicely painted, no smudging anywhere, and it looks pretty authentic, which is nice. The leather skirt actually is a little bit more textured because it actually is flexible rubber, which is fantastic. So again, no hindrance to the articulation, as we will see later on. And if we look at the boots again, we can see that everything about this figure is a unique piece for this figure. There are no recycled parts here. This is a brand new sculpt and it is completely unique to the line. Again, these boots here, these are hard, solid plastic, but again, they have nice detailing and nice paint apps. Okay, so moving on to articulation, there's no real articulation in the head. It can't move even from side to side. As I said, it is a single rubber piece, but that does give some flexibility to the ears, the horn, the mouth, so the lips can move if you want to push them together, which is pretty cool. He does have a ball joint in the shoulder, as we've seen. He can kick his arm up. There's no hindrance from that shoulder pad, which is good, but that said, there still isn't a great range of motion. It only really moves out as far as this. It doesn't go all the way, as we can see with the other figures in this line. He does have a hinge at the elbow, so he can bend his arm to roughly 90 degrees. There is a swivel at the wrist, but there is no hinge to speak of, which is a shame. And likewise, there is no ball joint in the chest or in the waist. There is just a straight swivel at the waist, meaning he can spin side to side and right the way around, but he cannot bend forwards or backwards. He does have ball joints in the hips though, meaning he can kick his legs out to the side. He's got the upper thigh swivel as well, which is consistent with the other figures in the line, and of course that means he can kick his legs forwards and backwards. Now there is a single jointed knee, so he can bend his lower leg to about 90 degrees, and there is something going on in the ankle, but it doesn't seem to be an awful lot. He can't hinge it forwards or backwards, and he can't really move it side to side, so I'm not quite sure what we're getting from this. He does come with quite a few fun accessories though. You'll notice he has this gun holster, and of course he does have his gun. Again, very nicely sculpted, very nicely painted, very accurate to what we see on screen, and is a pretty fun weapon. For a line that doesn't have a lot of accessories, the Jedun definitely comes with the most. As you would hope, his hands are sculpted perfectly to hold this weapon, so his grip is nice and tight and very snug, and there's no danger of it falling out. He does also come with his translator. He comes with two of these on either side of his belt. They fit very snugly onto his belt there and can be removed, which I think is a really nice touch. Once again, the detailing here is very faithful to what we see on screen, and it is very nicely and accurately painted. And what's more, because it is removable, you can use it just like they do in the TV show by sticking it into their chest piece in the center here like this, and it will fit in very nicely. A little bit loose perhaps, but it will stay there without the aid of being pushed in. You can remove your hand and it will stay in position nice and snug, which is great. He also comes with his helmet, which is fantastic, and believe it or not, this can be applied to the figure very easily without any damage to the sculpt, which is absolutely brilliant. It might seem slightly ridiculous, but it actually works really very well and very snugly, and it doesn't look oversized or out of proportion. Again, it looks very faithful to what we see on screen, and you've got two distinct looks here, which I think is absolutely brilliant, and again, top marks to Character Options for pulling this off. And for the sake of a size comparison to show you how big and bulky and broad this figure is, here he is next to the same series, 12-inch 10th Doctor. As you can see, he towers above the 10th Doctor just as he should, and he's a lot bigger and broader than any other figure in this line, which is pretty impressive. Moving on now to a character who isn't much loved, it is the Daleksec Hybrid. I have to say, I have no problems with this character whatsoever, and I was really quite excited to get my hands on this figure, and I think once again, they've done a really nice job with the presentation of this figure. The head sculpt, as we've come to expect, is excellent. It's a really nice, faithful sculpt to what we see on screen, which is brilliant. But also, I have to say, I think the paint apps are really wonderfully applied here. There's a lot of different colours, a lot of different washes going on, and there's just a lot of fine detail. The eye, the lips, the teeth, of course, the brain and the tentacles, all looks magnificent textured, and it looks lifelike, which is absolutely brilliant. The costuming, again, and the tailoring is very nice, very similar to the 10th Doctor outfit, but there are differences. Of course, this is a double-breasted jacket for a start, so it is slightly different, has slightly thicker lapels at the top there as well, but otherwise it's very consistent with what we've seen before. The material used is the same sort of thick cotton, which looks great and it feels very nice to the touch, and overall it looks pretty sharp. It's nice and tight fitting, and I do love the pinstripe. I think that is excellent. And just like the 10th Doctor figure, it does have a Velcro patch, so you can remove this jacket if you want. However, it is sewn in there at one point, so you'd have to remove that. I've not removed mine, but as you can see, if you were to pull this open, you'd be able to see the tie, more detail, and the black shares underneath, which is very nice. And finally, I have to point out, I really like these upturned cuffs that we can see at the bottom of the trousers. There's a nice little detail there, and of course we have those wonderful spats as well. So again, a completely different type of shoe for the figures in this line. They haven't recycled any pieces, and it's very effective for the most part. So he does have the standard articulation points as we've seen with the other figures in this line. I'll run through it again here because we haven't seen it so far in these figures. He has the swivel at the head, meaning he can spin his head right the way around. He's got ball joints in the shoulders, which means he can kick his arms up a really good distance, both up and to the sides, which is fantastic. He's got an upper bicep swivel. He has a double jointed elbow. He's got a pin swivel at the wrist, so he can rotate that wrist 360 degrees and of course hinge it forwards and backwards. There is a ball joint in both the chest and in the waist as well, meaning he can comfortably spin from side to side, bend forwards and backwards, and lean from side to side as well. At the hips, of course, he does have ball joints there as well, so he can kick his legs up to the side. There is a upper thigh swivel, and the legs can kick forwards, backwards, and of course double jointed knees mean he can kick his lower legs right the way back. And there is finally a ball joint at the ankle as well, meaning he can rotate that foot all the way around and of course hinge it forwards and backwards. Sadly, there are no accessories for this figure. That being said, I can't think of any from the show that he would have had or would have necessarily come with, so I don't think that that's necessarily a minus in this case. And overall, I have to say, I think both of these are a fantastic pair of figures. I think the Jedun certainly lacks in articulation. There is a few compromises here, but his overall size and bulk and detailing and accessories more than make up for that. He's a very overbearing, very impressive figure for this line. Likewise, the Dalek Hybrid is no slouch either. It's a very nicely tailored figure. The presentation is really good. I think ultimately your feelings on this figure will come down to whether you like the character and the design or not. But otherwise, it is certainly the equal of the 10th Doctor figure, which is a very good figure indeed. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.